Hi, I'm Jenny. Welcome to my channel. Today's card video is a follow-up to a card I did a little while ago. I'm using the same Simon Says Stamp Gnome stamp set with regular colored pencils instead of watercolor pencils for a no-line coloring look. So come check it out and let me know which one you like better, watercolor pencils or regular colored pencils. Thanks for stopping by.
All right, so like I said before, we are going to use this Simon Says Stamp Chillin' Gnomes, and I'm going to use the little girl gnome here, and I will be using regular colored pencils instead of watercolor pencils, but I am still going to use this Artist Loft watercolor paper. I don't normally use watercolor paper with colored pencils, but I thought since the comparison was watercolor pencils versus traditional colored pencils, I should use the same paper. I want to use the girl and the mushrooms in the stamp set and possibly the little flowers. I hadn't quite decided when I laid this all out. So I'm going to stamp the girl, and I'm picking an Altenew ink that I haven't used before. It's a really light brown, and I want to stamp off with it first to see how dark it comes in real life and to see if the stamped off is dark enough to color with, and I could not hardly see it, so I went ahead and stamped it up again, or inked it up again, and used it full strength. And then I'm going to mask her off because I will mess up. I am sure that I could probably have stamped the mushrooms or the toadstools, whatever you want to call them, and just not colored those lines, but I would have confused myself and ended up with a line right down her face, and I wanted the gnome to be under the mushroom, not behind the mushroom. So for my color choices here, I'm using Prisma colored pencils, and what I did is went on Pinterest. I have an entire board full of Prisma colored pencil combinations, and I found a combination that looked like what I wanted the hair to look like in the end. And it was a brown, a dark yellow, a light yellow, and a cream. So I started by outlining the outside of her hair, her little ponytail braids, with the dark brown, and then filling it in, going from darkest to lightest, and then back again. And when I was all done with the coloring, I went back in with the dark brown and the dark yellow, and did some flicking motions to add that hair look to it, so that it has kind of that texture of hair. For her nose and her hands, I used a 3-color blend. It was a brown and a cream and a yellow, and I used the colorless blender, the no pigment blender, to blend those colors out, just to give it a little bit smoother, because again, I'm on kind of a textured paper here. For her hat and her dress, I chose a green color. And I chose green because greens are by far my favorite colors in the world. There is not a shade of green that I don't like, even chartreuse. It's not my favorite green, but I will find a way to use chartreuse. I just love, love, love greens. And because this was a summery card, I went with kind of a mint or aqua-y green. And I've done the same thing with her hat here that I did with the hair. I started with the outlines and the darkest color, putting the darkest colors where the shadows would be, and then filling in the highlights, going darkest from lightest, lightest to darkest. And on most of this image and the color combinations, I used at least 3, but usually 4 different colors, so that I had a nice deep shadow and a nice bright highlight. When I color with colored pencils, I try really hard to keep my hands farther up the barrel and keep the pencil tip really sharp, so that I can add many, many layers of light pressured coloring. I have sped this up, I think, 8 times, maybe 16 times normal speed. The footage of this card was somewhere in the 1.5-hour time frame, and I really wanted to put all the coloring in, so I sped it up substantially. So there you can see I've colored her hands, and now I'm attacking the flowers on her hat. And I say attacking because you can see where my fingers are on those pencils. They were far down, and I was getting very heavy-handed with the pigment. But anyways, I went ahead and did the pencils, or the flowers in her hat and the flowers in her hand with the same colors of pink. And it is, again, a 3 or 4 color blend that I found on Pinterest. And I'm just putting the darkest into the shadows and the highlights into the front. For her little bloomers, I used some cool grays, and as well as the band on her hat. Some cool grays so that it actually reads more white. When all of the pigment is in, it looks like her bloomers and her hat band are white. And I'm using the same colors of brown and cream for her legs and her feet as I did for her nose and her hands. Now I'm going to go after this toadstool, this mushroom. And true story, I didn't love the color combinations that I chose for this, but I didn't want to introduce a third set of browns. So the stem is quite a bit darker than I think I would have liked, but I just went with it. I used the dark brown from her hair, the medium brown for the skin, and then I pulled in a putty gray to kind of give it the highlight. And the underneath, I used the same colors, using that dark chocolate brown in my little stubby chocolate brown pencil for the shadow parts, the veining underneath the mushroom, and use the lighter cream color and the putty color to pull those colors out and give it that, mushroom kind of color. Like I said, not my favorite color combination for mushrooms, but whatever, it works. In the end, it is a super cute little mushroom. I hate mushrooms. I don't eat mushrooms. I don't touch mushrooms. I think they're nasty. They're funguses that grow on piles of fertilizer, and I don't do mushrooms. But this one's cute. These mushrooms turned out cute, and I can handle cute mushrooms. For the tops of the mushrooms, I used a 3 red shade, and I did the darkest really is just the very corners of the shadow and the bottom. And then I used the mid-tone to really fill in most of the color with the lightest color for the highlight. And I used my colorless blender a lot. Reds in any pigment or any medium are finicky colors. They bleed easily, they spread easily, but they don't always blend the best. So I really spent a lot of time being really light-handed with my coloring, many, many layers, and I use that colorless blender a lot. So now that she's done being colored, I decided I wanted to use a kind of peacock green. I don't even know what the color is. I don't even know what brand it is. I think it is Stampin' Up's emerald green, but I could be wrong. And I cut the rectangle out with that Simon Says stamp. No, not Simon Says. My favorite things, wonky stitch rectangles. It leaves those cute little stitch lines in it that are a little bit, whimsical and fun. And I'm adding foam tape to the back of this panel so that it's popped up a little bit from the card base. This is that gigantic foam tape roll I buy on Amazon. And I looked, and this roll I'm using now, I bought in 2018. So it does last you a hot minute, depending on how often you use it. So here I have a little piece of blank copy paper, or it's actually not blank. One side of it was a misprint, but it's super light, so I cut it and used the back because paper has 2 sides. We're allowed to use both sides, right? And I put the white insert inside. So let me know, how do you feel about regular colored pencils versus watercolor pencils? I think this card turned out super, super, super cute. And I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much. Have a great day.